Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about the Community Wellbeing Initiative, which is not only transforming the way we work as a local government, but I think it's also transforming the way we work as a community together so that we can make a difference in the quality of life and the opportunities for individuals and their families in the community. So 500, that's the number of times the police were called by one individual to the same house in 2012. 66, that's the number of times one individual called for an ambulance in the first half of the year. 200, the number of times one individual visited the emergency department last year. 75% of our healthcare dollars are spent on 5% of the population. So in Guelph, or in our LIN, the Waterloo region, LIN, Waterloo, Guelph, etc., that's there's $1 billion that comes through the LIN into our region, and so that's $750 million, $750 million on 5% of the population. And for the city of Guelph, we're talking about, in our population, approximately 3,000 people. So these numbers disturb me. They surprise me in the same way that I heard the surprise from you when I told them. And so I know that they surprise others and disturb others as well. I'm personally upset to see the use of critical community services and tax dollars in this way, especially when we know there are more effective alternatives and they exist in our community today. I'm upset that despite formidable advancements in knowledge and technology, the system as a whole is failing the people, the real people behind these numbers and statistics. And I'm upset that the demands on the system continue to increase, costs continue to escalate, and yet better outcomes are often elusive for families and individuals. Malcolm Gladwell is an author who's familiar to you, from Elmira actually, tells a similar story in his New Yorker column, $1 Million Mary. At the center of Gladwell's story is a man named Murray, an alcoholic, who consumed a staggering amount of the system's resources. They stopped counting at $1 million. Health, police, social services, addiction services, correctional services, to name a few. And yet, once again, the system as a whole failed to make a difference in Murray's life. And every community has their own Murray stories within them. So we live in tight fiscal times, and we must become more efficient and effective stewards of limited resources. We cannot fund our way out of tough, persistent social problems, nor will the much touted but destructive ideology of austerity get us there. It's only going to make things worse. Inequality destabilizes our economic system, which then results in increased inequality. So you get into a costly downward spiral for the economy and then for individuals and families as well. If we spend more money on crime, the GDP goes up, but that shouldn't be confused with an increase in well-being. As mayor, I'm reminded every day that there is a gap between what the community wants and the ability of local government to deliver. And I'm reminded every day that the need for services in our community continues to grow and into areas outside of our singular or direct influence as a local government. I'm also reminded every day that there are remarkable resources found in our community: government funding and services, community assets and programs, charitable giving and volunteerism, service clubs, local talent, individual action, and resourcefulness. So how might we put these incredible, remarkable community resources to better use to improve the well-being of individuals and families in Guelph? That is the fundamental question that the Community Wellbeing Initiative is working to answer. I chair a group of community leaders who oversee this initiative. We have adopted the Canadian Index of Wellbeing as our framework, and it identifies 8 domains of well-being. Adopting this index was one of the smartest moves that we made at the beginning of our process, because it opened the door to us to world-class Canadian researchers, experts, and practitioners. We are the first community to use the Canadian Index of Wellbeing in this way and are receiving a great deal of attention for that. And members of the leadership group are being asked to speak across the country and into the US. As a group, we are working to align community resources to rein in escalating service delivery costs and achieve better outcomes for our community at the same time. So this is not about incremental change that we're talking about transformational change of the system that we're in. And so let me describe with a little story what I might mean by that. I recently attended the official opening of the expanded Hitachi plant up on Woodlawn Road. It's an expansion which is retaining and growing good manufacturing jobs in our Guelph. Good jobs are essential to community well-being. And on the tour, I saw that Hitachi was not just increasing the production of their large mining trucks. They were completely transforming the way they built them, moving from an assembly line to a team-based approach. They were getting out of their silos to improve productivity. That's what we're doing. We're working to escape our silos to do the same. And so I want to give you just two examples of some of the things that are happening in our community. The first story is really a story about some stars aligning, and then with a little bit of Guelph serendipity thrown in for good measure. The first star is the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care launched a new pilot program called Health Links. The goal is to reduce healthcare costs while improving health outcomes. So remember those 3,000 people in Guelph who consume 3/4 of our healthcare dollars. This is focused on that group of people. The second star is the Guelph Family Health Team. They stepped up and were selected as one of 22 pilots in our community, in the province rather. And so here's where the serendipity comes in. Guelph is unique. We have one family health team with over 100,000 patients, one acute care hospital, one community health center, one continuing care facility, one community care access center, one community mental health provider, one mental health facility, and one hospice, and a small number of community support agencies. All the players, it might be a little cramped, but all the players could fit around one of the tables in this room, where in another community, you'd need both sides of this whole to get everybody in the room that had a piece of the conversation that needed to be had. So in Guelph, it's a far easier conversation for us to have. And then the final star in this story is the Community Wellbeing Initiative. It has created a climate in Guelph that is pitching the Health Links pilot beyond primary health care to engage a broader range of service providers who can drive even better outcomes in our community and provide interventions that keep people out of the system and the costly system itself. The second story builds on the first. And I think this is a story about courageous and visionary leadership. The same risk factors that impact health outcomes also lead to crime and victimization, as well as impact outcomes in education, early childhood development, mental health, addictions, substance abuse, social and family services, employability, safe housing, and economic growth. Identifying community risk factors allows for earlier and more effective interventions that reduce costs on the system downstream, like policing, ambulance, and children's aid, while simultaneously improving the well-being of individuals and families. Police Chief Brian Larkin is the champion for this initiative, with the enthusiastic endorsement and participation of his colleagues on the leadership group. And the goal here is to replicate a highly successful community mobilization model from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, which is currently being rolled out to the entire province of Saskatchewan. And Prince Albert tells the tragic story of a 15-year-old who committed murder in their community. So Joe is their story of Murray. When they tracked back this young man's history and his many expensive contacts with the numerous service providers, they identified 14 missed opportunities where an intervention might have changed the tragic ending to Joe's story. This went all the way back to a grade school teacher who noted in records a debilitating change in the boy's behavior, but did not know that it had been precipitated by the young boy witnessing his mother kill his father. The Prince Albert model is a really powerful approach because it's data-driven, evidence-based, and results-oriented. No more ideology, speculation, or feel-good programs. It uses existing resources more effectively to deliver better outcomes for people. It reduces the demand on the system and therefore the costs. And so these two stories speak to how service providers in our community are changing the way we work together. They are possible because of the capacity for collaboration that has been built in this community over a number of years. And if you want to see what that looks like at the ground level, talk to the people at Hope House, because they're intimately involved with what's happening on the ground. But it would be a mistake for me to leave you with the impression that this work is solely about marginalized individuals and families. It's not. Solutions to complex and persistent problems need to draw upon a broad range of expertise and experience. Individuals and individual organizations can only have a limited impact on tough system-based problems. So the results of greater collaboration, coordination, focus on outcomes benefits the whole system and the quality of life it provides to each and every one of us. It would also be a mistake for me to leave you with the impression that this work is only being done through organizations and agencies, and that it's about them doing a better job at service delivery. We all have a personal responsibility for our own well-being and that of our family, but also the community. And so Rotarians, you know this best. You practice this. Take care of yourself, take care of others, take care of your place. This is a poster of Guelph Wellbeing Day. It's just one example of Guelph citizens taking action to promote the quality of life of individuals, families, and communities as a whole. And it came out of the conversations of people wanting to make a difference and organizing this event and hoping to make this an annual event for the community. Well, preceding its launch, this initiative, the Community Wellbeing Initiative, nests into our open government strategy, which we are in the middle of developing and rolling out to the community. This work is about rethinking government, shifting away from the vending machine model, which I have spoken to you about in the past, where you put $1 in and you get $1 out of service, to one where government serves as a platform. Not a technological platform, which is often what we hear the word platform used as, but one that helps to assist people to help themselves and to help each other and to build community. And so I'm going to show you, as I'm sure the technology is going to work, I'm going to show you a 12-minute video. It's a TED Talk, which I think does a brilliant job of describing the path that we're on in changing local government.
So a couple of years ago, I started a program to try to get the rock star tech and design people to take a year off and work in the one environment that represents pretty much everything they're supposed to hate. We have them work in government. The program is called Code for America, and it's a little bit like a Peace Corps for geeks. We select a few fellows every year, and we have them work with city governments. Instead of sending them off into the third world, we send them into the wilds of City Hall. And there they make great apps, they work with city staffers, but really what they're doing is they're showing what's possible with technology today. So meet Al. Al is a fire hydrant in the city of Boston. Here it kind of looks like he's looking for a date, but what he's really looking for is for someone to shovel him out when he gets snowed in, because he knows he's not very good at fighting fires when he's covered in 4 feet of snow. Now, how did he come to be looking for help in this very unique manner? We had a team of fellows in Boston last year through the Code for America program. They were there in February, and it snowed a lot in February last year. And they noticed that the city never gets to digging out these fire hydrants. But one fellow in particular, a guy named Eric Michaels Ober, noticed something else, and that's that citizens are shoveling out sidewalks right in front of these things. So he did what any good developer would do. He wrote an app. It's a cute little app where you can adopt a fire hydrant. So you agree to dig it out when it snows. If you do, you get to name it. He called the first one Al. And if you don't, someone can steal it from you. So it's got cute little game dynamics on it. So this is a modest little app. It's probably the smallest of the 21 apps that the fellows wrote last year. But it's doing something that no other government technology does. It's spreading virally. There's a guy in the IT department of the city of Honolulu who saw this app and realized that he could use it, not for snow, but to get citizens to adopt tsunami sirens. It's very important that these tsunami sirens work, but people steal the batteries out of them, so he's getting citizens to check on them. And then Seattle decided to use it to get citizens to clear out clogged storm drains, and Chicago just rolled it out to get people to sign up to shovel sidewalks when it snows. So we now know of 9 cities that are planning to use this, and this is spread just frictionlessly, organically, naturally. If you know anything about government technology, you know that this isn't how it normally goes. Procuring software usually takes a couple of years. We had a team that worked on a project in Boston last year that took 3 people about 2.5 months. It was a way that parents could figure out which were the right public schools for their kids. We were told afterwards that if that had gone through normal channels, it would have taken at least 2 years, and it would have cost about $2 million. And that's nothing. There is one project in the California court system right now that so far cost taxpayers $2 billion, and it doesn't work. And there are projects like this at every level of government. So an app that takes, a couple of days to write and then spreads virally, that's sort of a shot across the bow to the institution of government. It suggests how government could work better. Not more like a private company, as many people think it should, and not even more like a tech company, but more like the internet itself. And that means permissionless, it means open, it means generative. And that's important. But what's more important about this app is that it represents how a new generation is tackling the problem of government. Not as the problem of an ossified institution, but as a problem of collective action. And that's great news, because it turns out we're very good at collective action with digital technology. There's a very large community of people that are building the tools that we need to do things together effectively. It's not just Code for America fellows. There are hundreds of people all over the country that are standing and writing civic apps every day in their own communities. They haven't given up on government. They are frustrated as hell with it, but they're not complaining about it. They're fixing it. And these folks know something that we've lost sight of. And that's that when you strip away all your feelings about politics and the line at the DMV and all those other things that we're really mad about, government is, at its core, in the words of Tim O'Reilly, what we do together that we can't do alone. A lot of people have given up on government. And if you're one of those people, I would ask that you reconsider, because things are changing. Politics is not changing. Government is changing. And because government ultimately derives its power from us, remember, we the people, how we think about it is going to affect how that change happens. Now, I didn't know very much about government when I started this program. And like a lot of people, I thought government was basically about getting people elected to office. Well, after 2 years, I've come to the conclusion that especially local government is about possums. This is the call center for the services and information line. It's generally where you will get if you call 311 in your city. If you should ever have the chance to staff your city's call center, as our fellow Scott Silverman did as part of the program, in fact, they all do that, you will find that people call government with a very wide range of issues, including having a possum stuck in your house. So Scott gets this call, he types possum into this official knowledge base. He doesn't really come up with anything. He starts with animal control. And finally he says, look, can you just open all the doors to your house and play music really loud and see if the thing leaves? So that worked, so booyah for Scott. But that wasn't the end of the possums. Boston doesn't just have a call center. It has an app, a web and mobile app called Citizens Connect. Now, we didn't write this app. This is the work of the very smart people in the Office of New Urban Mechanics in Boston. So one day, this is an actual report, this came in. Possum in my trash can. Can't tell if it's dead. How do I get this removed? But what happens on Citizens Connect is different. So Scott was speaking person to person. But on Citizens Connect, everything is public, so everybody can see this. And in this case, a neighbor saw it. And the next report we got said, I walked over to this location, found the trash can behind the house, possum check, living, yep, turned trash can on its side, walked home. Good night, sweet possum. It's pretty simple. So this is great. This is the digital meeting the physical, and it's also a great example of government getting in on the crowdsourcing game. But it's also a great example of government as a platform. And I don't mean necessarily a technological definition of platform here. I'm just talking about a platform for people to help themselves and to help others. So one citizen helped another citizen, but government played a key role here. It connected those two people. And it could have connected them with government services if they'd been needed, but a neighbor is a far better and cheaper alternative to government services. When one neighbor helps another, we strengthen our communities. We call animal control. It just costs a lot of money. Now, one of the important things that we need to think about government is that it's not the same thing as politics. And most people get that, but they think that one is the input to the other, that our input to the system of government is voting. Now, how many times have we elected a political leader, and sometimes we spend a lot of energy getting a new political leader elected, and then we sit back and we expect government to reflect our values and meet our needs. And then not that much changes. That's because government is like a vast ocean, and politics is the 6-inch layer on top. And what's under that is what we call bureaucracy. And we say that word with such contempt. But it's that contempt that keeps this thing that we own and we pay for as something that's working against us, this other thing. And then we're disempowering ourselves. People seem to think politics is sexy. If we want this institution to work for us, we're going to have to make bureaucracy sexy. Because that's where the real work of government happens. We have to engage with the machinery of government. So that's what the Occupy SEC movement has done. Have you seen these guys? It's a group of concerned citizens that have written a very detailed 325-page report that's a response to the SEC's request for comment on the financial reform bill. That's not being politically active, that's being bureaucratically active. Now, for those of us who've given up on government, it's time that we asked ourselves about the world that we want to leave for our children. You have to see the enormous challenges that they're going to face. Do we really think we're going to get where we need to go without fixing the one institution that can act on behalf of all of us? We can't do without government, but we do need it to be more effective. The good news is that technology is making it possible to fundamentally reframe the function of government in a way that can actually scale by strengthening civil society. And there's a generation out there that's grown up on the internet, and they know that it's not that hard to do things together. You just have to architect the systems the right way. Now, the average age of our fellows is 28, so I am begrudgingly almost a generation older than most of them. This is a generation that's grown up taking their voices pretty much for granted. They're not fighting that battle that we're all fighting about who gets to speak. They all get to speak. They can express their opinion on any channel at any time, and they do. So when they're faced with the problem of government, they don't care as much about using their voices. They're using their hands. They're using their hands to write applications that make government work better, and those applications let us use our hands to make our communities better. That could be shoveling out a hydrant, pulling a weed, turning over a garbage can with a possum in it. And certainly we could have been shoveling out those fire hydrants all along, and many people do. But these apps are like little digital reminders that we're not just consumers, and we're not just consumers of government, putting in our taxes and getting back services. We're more than that. We're citizens. And we're not going to fix government until we fix citizenship. So, the question I have for all of you here, when it comes to the big, important things that we need to do together, all of us together, are we just going to be a crowd of voices, or are we also going to be a crowd of hands? Thank you.
So while a new app for your smartphone might leave you cold, I want to leave you with this message. There are two ways to break down silos. One is to step outside of them, and the other is to invite people in and literally turn yourself inside out by tapping the creativity and ingenuity of the people in your community. So this is not about apps. This is about a new relationship between local government and the people that it serves. And we have the tools available right now to transform the way that we work. We just need the courage to use them. And I use the word courage very deliberately because it is what we're talking about is transformational change. And it gets messy, and there's lots of pushback to doing things differently because goodness knows we've been doing them for centuries this way. But once it starts, once you start to turn yourself inside out, and once you get people into the system and starting this type of change, I think there's nothing stopping it because the rewards are so compelling for us. And we in Guelph, we're only going to be limited by our ingenuity. And in that case, I think that's limitless. So we've got lots of opportunity. Thank you very much for your attention and this opportunity. Thank you.